Howdy Meeps, welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show. Welcome everyone to the Meeple Syrup Show. It is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are here live and direct to you from London, Ontario, from sunny that way.
No, which way are you going?
California. And,
I don't know which way you guys sit on top of each other.
Yeah, Toronto. You're from Toronto. So I'm all messed up with my directions here, but this whole, what was a show that had this kind of
The Brady Bunch.
It's like the Brady Bunch. It's messing me up. So anyways, we're here today with our Dissecting the Game segment show. And today we are going to be dissecting a game that, has a lauded place in the history of modern board gaming. And we'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, is Pandemic. Matt Leacock's Pandemic, published by Z-Man in 2008. So a whole decade and a bit ago.
It's multiple versions now.
Yeah, and we are talking about Dissecting the Game. And in Dissecting the Game, we are going to try to break down the game a little bit. We'll go over the game as a whole, in general, not specific rules, unless it's super short. And then we'll break it down in terms of what we think was really cool design-wise in it. And if you have anything to add, post it right down there in the comments feeds. We'll get to it, and we'll bring your posts up online, and you can see it. You can be web famous for a couple seconds. But let's get to the game itself. The game overview. So Pandemic. What do you think, Jesse? What's going on here?
Diseases happen and you fix them. Maybe.
Four diseases
happen and you fix them. Maybe. All right.
You fix them. Well, you should fix them. The maybe part is dependent on if you can do it.
Right. There's this really fun tension between dealing with the diseases immediately and finding cures for them, and those come into conflict with each other because you only have so much time. But the sort of general gist is that there's 4 diseases that are wreaking havoc on the globe, and you and a team of experts based out of the CDC in Atlanta, this game's got some cool facts built into it, set out to both manage the diseases, the spread of these diseases, while simultaneously researching and sometimes distributing cures.
Yes, working towards eradication of disease.
That's not necessary, but nice.
It isn't. It's nice. It's a bonus thing, right?
Yes.
I just have a quick question. I do you guys know any anti-vaxxers who play Pandemic?
I guess I don't know how they feel about that.
I feel like
anyway.
I feel
There's
like
gonna be a disconnect there.
No, it's a perfect thematic alignment.
You think so? But they don't name the 4 diseases. They don't name the 4 diseases.
Measles, mumps.
Okay. Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. I wonder if there's just a disconnect because it's like the red one. I
don't know. Oh,
anyway.
Speaking of that, the first confirmed case of measles happened in Toronto, Erica, so look out.
Oh, okay. Well, we're all.
Well, I know. You just have kids. That may not be so. Anyways,
you can't. Okay, so you can't. This is totally off topic. Sorry, people. You cannot attend a TDSB school. There's a limited time right now that your kid will actually be pulled out if you don't have up-to-date vaccines. And I think.
Oh, good. I didn't know that.
First. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Good night. Good evening to Jamie Jones and Zach Connolly. And I think Dave Tomei and Andrew Wolf are watching. So please comment below if you have anything to tell us about Pandemic. Zach Connolly is talking right now saying that the first 4 times I played Pandemic, we played it wrong. And I thought the game was impossible.
That'd be funny to see how people have played wrong.
Yeah. How'd you play it wrong, Zach? Let us know. So let's start with what we're talking about today, and let's go to the agenda. So the game overview, as Jesse said, is diseases pop up on a map of the world, and we are moving around this map as characters, and each of our characters has a special ability, and we're trying to, a special ability, and we're trying to control, contain, eradicate, whatever you want to do to win the game in time. And we're trying to avoid major epidemics, like big blowouts of these diseases where the map will suddenly get covered in cubes that represent the disease. So let's talk about the design decisions that we thought were really cool. Erica, you can lead us off with this.
We are actually kind of going through some fun ones. So how about this? What I actually really liked if you've ever just to appreciate for a second watching this game set up, it's kind of like some pieces here, some pieces there, get some cards together, and you're kind of ready to go. So as long as you have people especially if you've played before and you understand your decisions that are about to happen, this game is to table really fast, especially for kind of what kind of game you're getting out of it. So what I think also stems from that is there's a really nice variability to play that I think is pretty friendly in the setup. And I think it also kind of gives you the sense that you're never playing the same game twice if you're a really avid or heavy repeat gamer, right? So again, the nice thing is at the beginning of the game, not only can you choose what kind of characters you want to be, and there is some difference in that because there's 6 characters, and I think they threw in a 7th for the second version to give it a little more diversity of people, something like that. I think the 7th person was an original. I think it wasn't.
Yeah, I think it wasn't. I bought the base game and On the Brink together, so I don't know.
Okay, so you're one of those.
You're not sure who got mixed in. Yeah, because we can talk about it at some point too. Yeah. So you still get that, we can play different characters. The cities can start with different epidemics. Yes, we're starting from always the main central point, but you can have a nice variety going on to the game, and you can set your difficulty level. So I think there's a lot of really friendly, easy making choices there that make it really a game that with not a lot of barriers to play.
Yeah, I mean the setup's really, other than the stacking of the deck, which we'll get to soon, because the deck is quite possibly the best part of this game.
Both decks, actually.
Yeah, other than the construction of the deck to start the game, it's really, really, really simple to start, and I think that's one of its design strengths is that it is so very easy, and you're thrown into this mix where the world is sort of already starting, it's seeded, the diseases are seeded, and you've got an idea of what you're supposed to do straight off the bat.
And it's not actually just a standard starting point. You actually start the game off in a point of crisis.
That's what I mean, yeah. You're in medias res, so it's awesome.
Yeah, because one of the critical mechanics in the game is that as you're adding disease cubes to spaces, if you add a 4th cube to a space, you get an outbreak, which is miserable. Because it spreads the disease to every adjacent space. It's boom. And that takes tons of cubes out of your disease stockpile, which is one way you can lose the game if you run out of a color of cubes, but also advances an outbreak track, which will just cause you to lose the game if it reaches the top. And in the game setup, you get 3 random cities that have 3 cubes in them, which are immediate problems.
Yeah, it's a nice 3-2-1 scale.
That's right. So, and I mean, there's a really important design lesson in there too. I think that it maybe be useful if we pointed out design lessons as we spot them, which is that while if you're writing a story, you might want to build people up towards that sort of climactic moment. When you're playing a game, especially a cooperative game, it's much more exciting and engaging to start at a critical point where the world is already on fire and you need to take action, right? So starting the game at a critical point is a really good way to engage players from the first turn.
I'm going to turn that into something different. There, now let's make it a crawler. Oh, there we go. And I think that Jesse and I have definitely been talking about starting more games in medias res as we design more and more things. That and whenever people ask me about demoing games, I say start people playing where it's interesting, where you have to make critical decisions right off the bat, and where you have affordances in the game that tell you what you should be doing, not just anything. I guess I'll collect this resource because I'm close to it. Is very different than let's go deal with that problem because we know it's a problem and it's just going to explode into more problems. Even if we don't know how the rules work, affordance-wise, just teaching-wise, disease bad, go eradicate, go get rid of it, or do whatever you can to it, right? And so I think that's probably another reason why it's such a good gateway game. And before we started, we had this argument. Jesse and Erica had an argument. Erica, do you want to tell? Well, it's a discussion. Do you want to tell us?
Discussion point. Yeah,
what's the
so
discussion point?
I think there's something really unique about Pandemic that in a lot of ways I look at it like it kind of, I don't want to say it not birthed the genre in any way, but it's sort of like, I feel like it kind of created its own kind of like co-opness, its own co-op game. I'm not sure where we're going. Like, it was kind of like, yeah, I guess I hadn't, or maybe it was just the point of introduction. There's something about it that it's you've been used to co-op games before, but there's something about this idea of this Euro style co-op that maybe it was just the first one people found, but there's something about it that kind of I feel like spawned or at least created quite the
Splash, a buzz?
trend, right?
Yeah.
Of like what that type of co-op would now be. Like, yes, we would have other co-ops that came around it that would be different kinds in their own way, but I think there was something really uniquely interesting about this.
Right, and I think the accessibility has something to do with its longstanding sort of, the my first co-op sort of vibe that it has.
Like let's think about the other co-op games that came out within that same sort of.
Well, I was just going to get to that.
period.
So
Yeah,
let's I'll read them out and I'll tell you the years. Arkham Horror at 2005. So Pandemic, by the way, was a 2008 game. Battlestar Galactica 2008. Betrayal at House on the Hill. Well, they're in the co-op thing, and that's what I'm telling. That's what I'm saying. Betrayal at House on the Hill 2004.
But then there's a lot of trainer mechanics in that one, I would say.
Exactly.
They're competitive.
2005. Yeah. Space Alert 2008. Ghost Stories 2008. Forbidden Island 2010, which is just basically an extension of Pandemic. And so you see a Lord of the Rings 2000, which is the one that you were talking about before.
Yeah, that was the first Euro co-op.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Defenders of the Realm, Hanabi 2010, Space Hulk 2010, Castle Panic 2009.
Defenders was just a reskin of Pandemic with a little bit more thickness on it.
Yep. So. And by a totally different designer. Battle Stations 2004. And so you see that a lot of them were co-ops. For sure. They were definitely co-ops, but a lot of them had that trader mechanic.
A lot of them had a competitive nature to them.
No.
Yeah. So maybe like on the list that I read, so Betrayal, Battlestar, Shadows over Camelot, of the popular ones.
When we talk about co-op, we don't often think of it's like kind of like that one versus it flops into a one versus many.
Yeah.
Instead of necessarily
the other ones, I'm gonna say we're like super hard. Right? So Shadows over Camelot. No, sorry, not Shadows. So it's Space Alert and Ghost Stories.
So Ghost Stories is super hard. Space Alert is a choose your own difficulty. I think all green Space Alert is easier than base game Pandemic with epidemics. It's hard to lose.
Play that?
well, you do though. If we want to talk about this is a different dissection. Space Alert's tutorial actually makes you play that. It's got an excellent series of 3 tutorial missions that ramp up difficulty really well. It's like video game tutorial 101. So you do play all green, but only for your first mission. Right. And it has, the option of making it insanely difficult. But what actually I think is interesting to think about, and where I thought you were going to go instead of just making a big list, is if we think about the co-op games that came out in the same band with Pandemic, right? So we've got Pandemic, we've got Ghost Stories, we've got Space Alert. Mm-hmm. The only one of them that is now, a decade or so later, still super easy to get, a game that everybody has heard of, is Pandemic.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? Space Alert's my favorite game of all time still. Yeah. And I mention it in board game groups all the time. And I always get a dozen people going, oh, that looks really interesting. I'll look into it. But if you jump into any board game group and say, yo, who's not played Pandemic? You get crickets.
Can I put something out there? I think really thinking about this list again, I think besides obviously mechanical differences amongst them, I think the major difference is theme. I think that's a huge factor in a lot of these. I think again, because we're listing either kind of like science fiction or fantasy based, right? Or even horror. So still kind of falling into that fantasy realm. Yeah. Maybe there is kind of that disconnect to something that maybe everybody knows about. And what does everybody know about? To some degree, world diseases or like, just basic, like simple medical knowledge. But I think it also feeds off of a really interesting common fear that maybe is far more, again, talking about accessibility, but far more accessible than a lot of these other storylines would be. I might know nothing. Maybe I don't feel like a gamer. Maybe I don't feel like maybe I'm a little intimidated by this game because I haven't really taken this like next step, to this type of game before this wait. But I get the genre. I get what I'm going to do. And then so we can talk about this too in smart design choices is everything I'm doing thematically makes sense. And I feel like I would already do it just naturally. Like it's exactly what I'd want to do, how I describe it. Like, what those actions mean just by like there's almost no text. If you really look at that, you don't have to explain the action much. That's just kind of nice in that.
Yeah. Charter a flight. What does that mean? Well, it means I go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very, as Zach Connolly just said, he said, out of them all, Pandemic is rooted in reality. And I think that thematic resonance that the game has with everybody, it's on a map of the world that we all live in, It's
a world.
Right? Yeah. It kind of speaks to everybody already in terms of, what's going on. And we have all those disaster movies. We had the SARS outbreak. We had all these things that kind of roll into this really nice realm of a game that's accessible. So back to mechanistic stuff, though. Dave Tomei says, the mechanism provides attention, experience is key, and intensity builds and worry grows. And it's very different than the experience that you get in Ghost Stories. Like I found Ghost Stories, and with Space Alert, Ghost Stories is basically, I'm getting hammered, and now I'm getting hammered harder, and I'm getting hammered harder still, in a different way than Pandemic makes you feel, I think anyways, and this goes back to Matt's Flow channel talk, that, I can handle that. I think we can handle that.
It's on that precipice of like, this could go horribly wrong, but I'm just maintaining it.
Yeah. I think actually the Hamlet hit points is the right tool to compare Ghost Stories and Pandemic with.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Right? Because in Pandemic, things get bad for you, but then they get better. And then they get bad again, and then they get better. But in Ghost Stories, it never gets better.
No, it never gets
You
better.
start off in the best position you will ever be in, and the entire thing is a roller coaster crashing into a pool of lava.
The pool is lava. And then the other, Space Alert is just off the rails. It's just off the rails. It's just an incredibly intense. It's just a high intensity 10 minutes, right? There's not enough time for an ebb and flow. It's just running at peak velocity, and then it's over. And you see what happened, right? It's broken into. It's like a box car plot. Yep. It's funny. So Matt, I'm not sure. I think the theme was always that. I haven't asked him about that. I've never actually known.
Oh, if the theme ever changed? Yeah. I mean, as expansions that had, or even like versions of it with the changed theme.
Yeah.
But the fact that I don't think we readily talk about or like can bring them to mind right away is maybe what the best theme was.
I recall, and this is now hearsay from memory, but I recall reading an article years ago, an interview with Matt talking about where the game came from. And it was originally designed with a deck of cards on an airplane and like using graph theory or like just thinking about networks. And then he got stuck on the design and needed to find a theme. And then it was suggested to him to use the theme that it now has. That locked the rest of the mechanics in place, and it was done.
Fair enough.
So it was an abstract first, and then the theme got applied, and that theme just fit it so perfectly that...
That might be where some of the Uriness comes from, right? Like to a degree is, a lot of those are mechanically based first, and you can kind of feel the difference a little bit in some ways. But the nice thing is there's a really good marrying between the theme and the mechanics. And maybe that's why it clicked so well on his end if that was the design story, right? Because that just sort of says it's like this had a natural logic that absolutely fit the original intent.
Yeah. And that's a good happenstance. Jamie Jones says that Pandemic is easy to learn and follow what's going on. More than once, he's taught Pandemic to somebody minutes before a Pandemic survival tournament, and they played and held their own. And just for reference, Jamie is the Canadian head referee for Pandemic Survival. So he's played it for years and years and years and knows the system quite intimately. And that's a really good point, that people can play pandemic with very little experience because it has such great affordances, I think, in terms of what are you going to do? And that sounds like I would do in real life anyways. It's not like +1 this and -7 that and roll this dice. It's just, I'm going to go do that thing. And you just do it. You literally take the cube off the board and put it away. I'm cleaning this area up of this disease, right?
Right. If you're playing well, you're putting the game away.
Yeah, that tactileness is fun, or the putting them in.
Yeah.
And I think I have two things to bring up next. I don't know if you want to do them in order. I think it's really good to talk about that cascading, the idea of how the outbreaks work.
Sure,
I think that's really nice about that. And I think there's another one that was really good that was brought up in the comments is the idea, and this is maybe somewhat a problem with certain co-ops in general, is the idea of quarterbacking.
Yeah.
So maybe two things to talk about here.
Let's start with this one, because Shem Phillips is saying, my favorite mechanism is how the infection deck resets after an epidemic. It adds tension, deduction, and memorable moments. But sorry, Jesse, you had a point?
No. I was just going to suggest we hold off on talking about quarterbacking. So
yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
I just want to mention because it was brought up twice. We did acknowledge that. We will talk about it at some point. So.
Yeah. I'm going to even write it down on my board here with apparently with my microphone. With my
so, Erica, why don't you remind us how an epidemic works and how that interacts with the deck of location cards?
Yeah, so there's some neat things that happen. So as you're drawing out different areas, it's going to tell you the location and what disease is breaking out there. And if it ends up having the outbreak, let's say, so once a city can only hold 3 cubes, which is a nice clean number. You can see right away if they're there. Once it gets to a 4th, you're going to have a cascading effect. And what happens is everything that is directly adjacent by a line is going to then have an outbreak in those areas. Now, what this can create is this really, really cool chaining effect where all of a sudden you've had to add to an area that all of a sudden bumped that to a 3 level. And now that has a cascading effect. And so what's neat is that it creates these really interesting, like high tension moments that come out of it. And then what's really neat too is that once you've kind of dealt with an epidemic, there's a really neat shuffle mechanic that happens. And so this is what we were bringing up about the deck a minute ago, is you end up taking every city that's already been discarded, shuffle them up, and apply them back to the top of the deck. What ends up becoming really neat about that is that, again, added tension, I think in a lot of the right ways to say, well, these places are already a problem. They're now the most likely to come back up next. And then there's a really kind of clean mechanic that's attached to this, that anytime a card needs to be actually drawn that is not from the top, like outside of this, it's going to be drawn from the bottom.
So this is actually, Kita, you're not helping me.
Sorry.
Yeah, that might have been just a little confusing how it works. So an epidemic has 3 steps, right? Step 1 is to, let's see if I remember. It's to draw the bottom card of the infection deck, which will bring a new city.
A new city active. Sorry, I was doing it backwards.
Pile.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's right. And you do that first. Then you shuffle your discard pile. And this is the brilliant thing. This is like game design brilliance. You shuffle the discard pile for the deck of cards where all the bad stuff is happening, and then put it on top of the draw deck. So all of the cities that you have seen problems in up to this point in the game will now have problems recur in them.
Again, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's definitely been times when I see it in their faces as they're playing for the first time. There's this big eye-opening experience where they go, oh my God, I just realized what's going to happen. What Jesse just said, that, this city that just got hit hard has a higher percentage chance of coming up because we just put it back where it could possibly come up.
Not only a high percentage chance, 100%.
Oh yeah, it's going to come up if we get anything new. Yeah.
Yeah. And they just realize that and they go, oh my God, this is amazing. Right.
And this gets back to what Erica was talking about earlier with the random setup, creating different game experiences. Because if your first, 10 city cards end up mostly being in Asia, then you hit an epidemic. Now, all of a sudden, for most of your game, Asia is going to be where all the bad things are happening. Because those 10 cards are going to come back. And you're going to hit another epidemic, and they're going to come back. Right? And that gives you a different game experience than if your first 10 cards are evenly distributed across the world.
Right.
Which is much harder, which is a much different challenge to deal with, because now you're going to have to distribute yourselves. You're not going to be as concentrated.
Right. Another interesting thing about that and the whole idea that you get a very different game and it tells a very different story depending on what's happening, and you actually have to play differently depending on where the epidemics are localized around geographically. You have to use your powers differently. Sometimes it's like, okay, now we're in a game state where we can actually eradicate diseases, and now we're in a game state where we just have to clean up and mop up little bits here and there to prevent the outbreak. And you actually make very different decisions based on game state. Jamie, if you're on, do you mind coming on in a second? I'll patch you in and you could talk about
Survive
at some point, like during this show, Jamie. If you are able to do that, like if you have a mic and stuff, let me know and I'll get you the link to come on, because Survive to me was like this whole big rebirth of pandemic in my brain. Of like, this is what it's capable of.
I think it's the ultimate way to play.
Oh, it really, really is. It's super fun. So I'll message Jamie over on Facebook over there, but we'll talk about that in a second. So yes, definitely that deck and the way that it stacks and unstacks and forms and reforms is super, super amazing. Do you think that leads to quarterbacking though? If we're gonna, segue into quarterbacking, what are your thoughts?
Leads into it.
Well, yeah, because there's that memory.
Yeah. So it's going to benefit players who maybe paid or had a better memory or paid more attention to what back in the deck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just wondering. Do you think it does?
I mean, go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to say the main reason why Pandemic has a quarterbacking problem,
if that's even
is because. Am I still here?
Yeah, you just blipped a little bit. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. The blip.
Oh, I might not be here.
The blip I received was apparently much stronger than the blip I delivered. Is because it's relatively easy to just play 4 characters at once. Right?
Yes, I think we're freezing.
I think you guys are fine.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not. Hold on.
You're glitchy a little bit. Oh, send left. Okay, keep going.
Anyway, the hardest part about playing four characters at one time is keeping their hands separate, which just means organizing your table space well. And I say this as somebody who used to solo Pandemic with 4 characters for an afternoon. So I think the reason why it's got a quarterbacking problem, if you believe in quarterbacking being a problem,
there's a comment about that we'll bring up too.
Yeah, is just because it's so simple, right?
There's a logical process. You would assume everyone's going to do it, and then if they don't, a lot of people might want to tell them how to do it. But right. There was a good point that was brought up. It might have even been Jamie, who was on a moment ago, was saying that, is it always a bad thing? Because there's a lot of people who are beginner players or casual players that kind of don't mind if someone that's the best thing to do. Cool, let's just do that. It's kind of like, yeah, son, you have no voice. Oh, it was Travis. Thank you.
Travis. Sam brought it up.
And so I think that's sometimes what we identify as problems is more personal gamer preference than necessarily a problem. Because a lot of the time, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, carry on. Keep talking.
Because I was going to say, if you actually look at a lot of the games that probably not necessarily have the highest ratings, but have definitely the highest sales, there's something about them that is just, there is a nice way of playing or intuitive way of playing. And even if someone tells you how to play, you're like, it's fine. We had a good moment together. We had fun. And it's usually gamers who complain a lot about these type of things.
And people who think too much about game theory, I think it is, right?
Yeah. I get that. You want to have something you're like, wow, this is brilliant. This is smart. This is what? Sometimes people just want to feel clever on their own level. And if they have to, you know what I mean? No one wants to be in their casual time. They don't want to be made to feel dumb. That's the best way to put it.
That's right. And I mean, yeah, that's right. So to walk back a small bit, Eric had commented, Eric Slauson, that's why a lot of co-ops try to obscure information with hidden information or by taking away players' senses. So one interesting thing in the context of Pandemic about this is that the original version of Pandemic had hidden hands. But I believe now, if you buy Pandemic at Target and you open that rule book, it tells you to put your hands face up on the table. And
It does.
An option in the back of the book that's like, you could hide your hands and not talk about it if you want.
And they consider that a difficulty level now. So you're absolutely right. This was a rule switch, which again, you know, you have to think about who's in mind with that kind of choice.
That's right. Exactly, which is exactly where I was going with it. Because, you know, if you put this in front of the BGG hobby gamer crowd, they'd scream, alpha gamer problem, this is garbage. And yet this game is still selling off shelves in Target at full price, when most games get clearance reduced within 6 months. And this is the way that people experience the game for the first time, is with open hands and open information. And so, you know, alpha gamer problems are problems in some contexts, but not others. And when you're reaching outside the hobby market, I think it actually creates opportunities for a more holistic cooperative experience when we can all work on that puzzle together.
Talking through it. Yeah.
Right.
You know what? I think it's a lot more family friendly. Because let's be honest, that's tends to be what this is for. And it's going to be either, you know, couples gaming or people with their kids or whatever it is. You're going to have that experience. Like, there's going to be variability of experience that they kind of naturally want someone to sort of be like, it's okay, you know, like I can almost like I'll be the leader. We're still all playing, but maybe it's not quarterback so much as like directing slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I totally agree with you. We're on the same page.
No.
Yeah, and San's unfortunately not here to
Yeah, what happened to his volume?
I don't know, and he's also disconnected. And he left Travis's comment, I think, over somebody. It's covering us somehow.
Oh well.
But anyway, I hope we're live. Yeah, we are live.
Hi guys.
Hi guys. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I see the alpha gamer thing over and over again. I guess if I was to stress one lesson that you can take away from Pandemic and its commercial success, its repeated commercial success, is that the alpha gamer problem is an audience problem. Mm-hmm. And you need to know what your audience is, and that's going to help you decide whether or not you need to even care.
Yeah, I think sometimes they just yell too loud. It's sort of like the minority with a big voice. Not to say, guys, we love you, but at the same time, games are for everybody.
Or for different people, right? And
yes.
And, you know, alpha gamer problems also have a lot of like social layers to them. If you have an alpha gamer in your group, part of that is a social interaction problem. And
it's true.
Game designer can't necessarily solve that, right? Yeah. And there are some brilliant games that do deal with it. Hanabi is an excellent game that doesn't have any kind of quarterbacking because of its structure. But if you force yourself to solve that problem, you would never necessarily have made Pandemic.
That's true. And I mean, you kind of said exactly. If it can still fly off the shelf at Target full price, it's on a level of kind of, you know, where the ticket to rides are. And those games are the first time someone hears about it. This is one of the first co-op games they're going to be introduced to. Yeah. And so there's something super valuable about that. And then talking about rating differences, I looked on BGG and I think this is at like a 7.8. And you're like, okay. Hey, Jesse's gone too. I don't know what's happening, people. I'm all by myself. I'm having a one-person conversation right now. The chat could keep talking. So I'm looking down here. We're talking about Eric's talking about 2 rooms and a boom. Okay, he's talking again about that alpha gamer idea. Someone's trying to bump back in. Oh, now there's 4 of us. You guys left me all by myself for a second. It was very strange. Yeah. No, seriously. At one point, you guys completely left. I was talking to myself. It was very unnerving.
Okay. Hopefully, something went really wrong with the software. So I'm hoping that it's not really wrong right now. I can't tell you.
It seems to be working. We are live, and I think people are interacting because I'm getting some highs for me being alone.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, Travis, you were half the screen. Hopefully he's not half the screen anymore, because I'd like to introduce Jamie Jones, who is up there. Jamie Jones is
Hi, guys.
Our friend from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and he has been a survival judge for 5 years. Jesse and I have been survival judges. Erica, have you ever judged survival?
No, I don't judge things.
Oh, well, it's really, you don't really have to judge anything, to be honest. You just have to moderate the game and let it run.
You just draw cards and shout things.
Yes.
Oh, I could totally do that.
You cough a lot and you pretend to be sick. It's awesome. But Jamie, why don't you tell us what Pandemic Survival is all about?
All right. So basically, Pandemic Survival was a tournament where basically teams of 2 are basically playing Pandemic exactly as you always sort of would, except that everybody's player deck is rigged so they all come up with the same player cards at all the same time. And the judge is actually running the infection deck such that all the infections will come up the same way for each team and all that. So the game is played until either one team cures all 4 diseases or basically you're the last team standing, which more often than not is how it actually ends up.
Right. So to me, the cool thing about Pandemic Survival is the deck and how the scenarios have been built around the deck and to cater to specific characters, character powers. They added some really interesting stuff at one point with like your characters would have hit points and things like that. So there's been some evolution of the game within just the small ecosystem of Pandemic Survival. I haven't played it in a little while. Jamie, so has there been ever any real interesting stuff that's happened in survival as of late, like in the last 2 years?
Well, actually, like the most unique way was exactly that idea of you having the life points. That was added a couple of years ago for the one tournament.
Yeah.
The only other major differences is as you sort of play through. So if you're playing on sort of a local level, you're basically going to be playing regular Pandemic. But as you advance up to, say, the nationals and things like that, we start adding a little bit more of the expansion stuff. But it is it's nothing you will have not seen if you've ever played regular Pandemic. But the scenarios get a little bit harder. We rigged them specifically to be harder the higher up you get.
That's really cool. Nate Murray says, survival is my favorite format. How long does it take to set up at events? Seems like a hassle.
It depends. I've gotten it down to where I can prep 12 tables of decks. I can do that probably in about 2.5 hours. When I first started, it would have taken me all day to prep a game, but I can do it fairly quickly now.
You're doing that all by yourself?
When I'm prepping decks, I usually do it by myself, just to stop from actually accidentally having errors or people accidentally shuffling other decks. When we actually set up at tables, I usually have all the other referees help us out.
Right, okay. Like it's just so the deck prep is by yourself, and then
exactly.
Because I mean, I've set it up, I've done the deck prep.
I also, if I'm also the head ref at a game, I typically want to prep it all up because I want the judges to have some surprises too along the way. So I don't even necessarily let them know what the scenario is either until the game actually starts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten to the point where, like, part of also reffing is not only just judging and making sure people are playing the game right and calling out the infection, but we have fun. Like, I'll be typically dancing, I'll cheer for people, I'll actually cheer for the diseases, I'll heckle players. I've got regular players who've been coming for years, and I will heckle them constantly.
Right.
Just because I know they can take me heckling them and doing that. And it just makes for fun.
Right. I just have to tell the story of my favorite Pandemic Survival experience. So I got to play Pandemic Survival. I wasn't playing. I was the judge. And actually, Daryl and I were the judges for this event. And it was Matt Leacock was playing with JF Gagne. And JF was working at Z-Man at the time, and obviously Matt is the designer of the game. And table down from him, it was Tom Lehman, who is the co-designer of the On the Brink expansion for Pandemic. And they were playing a game. They were playing in Pandemic Survival, and Tom got eliminated because their characters lost hit points. And the last two tables were this table of players who were not famous game designers who are associated with this game, and then JF and Matt were at another one of the final tables. And it was really interesting because you could see, as a judge, I can see what's happening at both of the tables. And Matt was playing, because he knows the math of the game intimately, obviously, he was just playing a game to literally survive. And he was like cleaning up the table. So nothing's ever going to happen. We're not going to do anything. And the other table was taking massive risks to try to eradicate, to try to last out, to not just outlast, but to win the game. And they actually ended up winning the game, as opposed to Matt's clean, stable table survival strategy. And it was really interesting to watch. Yeah, Dave told me he was playing in that game, and it was really cool. And I had the idea at one point that, and we were talking to Z-Man at the time, of setting up cameras over everybody's tables, whether it's just the final two or whatever, just to see what the difference in decisions, in the decision forking path down the survival deck ends up looking like game state wise for every table. I would love to see like a big screen of a tapestry of that going on at once, because it's really amazing what goes on.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I actually like judging, because I can actually see that. I can look down at the tables and I can sort of see, and I can predict sort of how people are going to do in the game along the way. And I think it's fun as a judge. I've never actually been a player in the game. I've always judged.
So how has being a judge at Survive events affected your perception of Pandemic?
It's actually funny because I'm not a good Pandemic player. I don't do very well in straight Pandemic. Probably because of I've just seen so many different techniques and all that, but I've just never been really good at it myself. I don't necessarily lose every game, but I don't necessarily do well in every game. I also now, there's so many good variations of Pandemic now that even just playing straight vanilla Pandemic isn't something I commonly do anymore.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So which is your favorite right now, Jamie? Your favorite variant?
Right now, Pandemic Iberia is probably still my favorite.
Tell us about Pandemic Iberia and why it is your favorite.
I actually find, because I find it actually the hardest of all the pandemics right now. Basically, it's putting it back in basically Spain, back when it was Iberia, the Iberian Peninsula, back pre-airplanes and things like that. So you can't use planes and stuff to travel around. Instead, you've got trains to travel about. You also can't eradicate the diseases. This is in a time before we've really understood germ theory. And so in there, all you're doing is just trying to keep the diseases down, but still trying to cure people and stuff like that.
Right, and my favorite mechanism in Iberia is actually the trains. I love the trains. I just think it's a really simple train mechanic, but it works so well for the actual game itself. Like it fits within the system of the pandemic system nicely, where it's this added movement factor that doesn't overtake the game, but adds to it. And I thought that was really neat.
The other good variation you can add into that is where the cubes themselves aren't the disease, but you consider the cubes themselves to be diseased people.
Yeah,
who actually start moving towards the hospitals. And therefore they start causing outbreaks as they come together. So you actually have to keep moving the hospitals out of their reach.
That
sounds like a zombie game.
Yeah.
Kind of, in a way, yeah.
I've played Cthulhu, I've played Iberia. I mean, you could possibly consider, some of the other games that are out there in terms of Matt Leacock's legacy, not just legacy, but so the Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert and those types of games, offshoots of the brand. So I've played all of those as well. One of the things that the chat right now is talking about heavily is player powers. So
yeah, I was just trying to look up all of them so I could have them all listed out, just because you kind of remember like the last couple of characters you played.
Yeah,
I kind of wish I had them all.
And so
there's only one.
The dispatcher.
Well, that's the funny thing is actually
You
when
mean
I was
the game
looking-
winner?
So when I was looking, because I sorry for spacing out for a second, because I really was looking to pull this up so I could read them to go through so everyone knew what they were. I came across this BGG thread that actually had all of them listed and people had rated them. And so here's the funny part: it ended up only showing 3 ratings. People either had a 0, a 4 point something, or basically just under an 8. And there was every single card that was listed. The only thing is it didn't list them in order of game. So I couldn't pull out to say which game they were. But it was really funny that either like we loved them, they were meh, or like nobody used it.
Well, I mean, you'll find that is statistically how people rank things anyways. If you look at ranking methods, that you're either a 0, a 10, or a 5. That's sort of it. And the reason why people don't like 10-point scales is because it doesn't give you a true midpoint, which you don't really need statistically. But anyways, that's
well, I have the names here, but I can't read all the powers. So we have at least the first game. If you count to the full 7, not the 6. If you don't want to count originally 6, I think you're getting rid of the quarantine specialist. But so scientist
loves the quarantine specialist.
I think she was the version 2 because that was. I don't remember there being a black female in the first round, and I think that was their way of adding more diversity.
Yeah.
To be fair, but I mean, they think they did a really good job representing men to women, especially because of scientific roles, and then you know that could have been a whole issue. And I think they were trying to even go one step further. So yes, the contingency planner, the medic, the dispatcher, the operations expert, and the researcher. Unfortunately, I can't read; they're all individual ones. And I was trying to find that text, and I apologize for looking down, but that's what I was looking for.
That's okay.
It's actually interesting is whenever I was running a pandemic survival tournament, that was one of the things I had to make sure to keep absolutely secret. And one of the things the players always tried to find out before the games is what roles were being played. I know so many teams would try to rehearse with every combination pair they could just to make sure that they had it down.
People take it quite seriously.
I was going to say, what do you find the average favorites are? Maybe you could, because it seems like there's definitely favorites going down.
Yeah, we got shouts out to the medic. I love the quarantine specialist.
The quarantine specialist was always a favorite of the players in pandemic survival.
Yes, there's a reason.
The refs hated it.
Yes. Brad Batchelor says the dispatcher. Jesse's on Team Jesse. Team Dispatcher.
I was gonna say, if you have to move around really fast, like that's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of these are very contingent on like what happens, but if you just want to, like things are going wild in every direction, you want that character.
What I when I want to be challenged at a game of Pandemic, I don't play with this. I don't use the dispatcher. Because being able to turn your actions into moves for other players is just crazy. It's just so good. It's never not useful.
Yeah, so I mean, the medic and the dispatcher are typically.
Oh, and if you have those together.
Yeah.
I
just drag you around and I just mop up.
That's right. You'll eradicate one disease if you have both of them. Because it's the only, I think it's the only base roll combination that combos.
Was the medic the one where you only had 4 to 5 cards?
No, the medic is the one that when they.
Scientist.
Yeah.
Because that's for the disease.
The medic takes extra cubes off when they travel through spaces.
Yes.
Or if the disease is eradicated, they just clear spaces when they enter it. It's free.
Yeah.
And so you cure a disease, and then you, as the dispatcher, pick up the medic pawn, and then dust off the board with them.
and now they're
a disease.
Yeah.
That's how diseases are gone in real life, right? Someone just walks through a village, it's gone.
Someone calls someone just calls the medic. It's like, go left.
Yeah.
That way.
But the thing is, that I think that that the dispatcher, even though it does push into quarterbacking realm, even though it does make the game somewhat easier in some ways, I also think it makes the game more interactive between players.
I would say that's probably the best player to give to somebody who might quarterback anyway, because they have to do it in the benefit everybody else. You can say no. Like that's the thing. They can force you to go.
You're not wrong. I'm not saying that Jesse quarterbacks, but he's a darn good dispatcher.
There you go.
If you're really worried about quarterbacking, you play the way we play once you get to nationals at survival, where every turn, like all your turns are timed, and you're not allowed to talk between turns.
Oh.
You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to make any facial expressions.
Okay.
You've got to do everything quick within turns, and it usually means that table talk is so fast and minimalized.
Yeah.
Zach is asking, what was the one that could set up bases? Was that even in pandemic?
Operations expert.
Yeah, it's the operation expert. And I guess, you know, we'd be remiss to talk about pandemic without talking about Legacy.
The game.
I've never
my
played
favorite.
Legacy. I will be honest.
What?
This is when my children are quite young, but my children were even younger then.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I've
There's still some
played
catching up to do.
I played both Legacy 1 and Legacy 2. We played them straight through, from cracking the box to completely finished in one.
Oh, that's right.
each
You
in
did
one
those.
night.
Did you do those for Extra Life?
For Extra Life, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first one took 14 hours, and the second one took 16 hours.
Oh,
Wow.
Zach Connolly is saying I should try a poll. Okay, I'm going to try to add a poll.
With 3 options.
Well, I don't know. No. To this particular thing. Let's see what I can
Let's
do
see
here.
what happens. Press some buttons. Just don't knock anyone off.
Oh, hey, this is a good question. While I'm doing this, you guys answer Brad's question. Brad asks, has anyone ever lost a pandemic on first turn? I think it's possible.
Well, there's a Reddit thread about this, but I don't know how real it is. Or if this is one of those urban legend things. There is
That would
honest to God,
require.
because when I look things up, as you know I do for the
What would that take?
episodes,
It would require
there-
the
Top
first
card?
the triple diseases to all be in like right side by side.
Top
And
card
then-
is an epidemic, and you did nothing about it.
Yeah, but yeah. So the odds of the top card being an epidemic, since you're supposed to shuffle them down a bit,
Yeah.
so it's rare.
Maybe you
It's
set it
hard
up
to
wrong.
set up. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not set up very easily, but
And that cluster would also have to be far enough away from Atlanta that you can't get to
can't
it.
get to it in time. Yeah.
So one person in the world, Brad, probably.
I want to know how this
experienced
happens. Okay, I'm reading it right now. Just give me a second. It's called "We Just Lost Pandemic on the First Card Draw." Hold on.
Okay.
You guys keep talking while I figure out what the hell happened.
All right.
Okay.
I have had people in
yes,
survive
it is.
lose. I have had people in survive lose by turn 6.
I can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And I mean, it is really a confluence of all the stars aligning or misaligning. It's just like your what was it? Channel fireball combo in Magic type
Mhm.
thing, where you just have to draw into that kind of crapshoot.
Okay, they don't literally mean the first card. It's a chain of what happens. So this is what the person says. They had Karasha had 3. So initial setup, Karasha had 3 cubes. Kolkata had 2 cubes. First draw is an epidemic. Epidemic has an outbreak in Dolly. There's now 3 cubes in Dolly. Shuffle the infection discard pile. First infection card, Dolly again, of course. Outbreak in Dolly. Leaves the outbreak in Karacha and puts the 3rd cube onto Kolkata. Second infection card, Kolkata. Then they swear. Outbreak Kolkata, outbreak Dolly, outbreak Karacha, and we're out of cubes.
Yep. That was for, I just saw the thread.
Yeah.
That was, in fact, their first turn.
Yeah.
The setup
There you
put the 3-2 beside each other in the black
Yeah.
black
It
area.
is possible.
And then the infection on the epidemic put another 3, and then you have that cascade you were talking about, and it cascaded one way, and then it hit back the other way, and you ran out of black cubes.
You can lose in that round.
The good news is you can set that back up in a minute.
That's what someone else said. They're like, if that came up first round, I'm sorry. No.
Is it a bunny? Is it a bunny?
He didn't like that my cord was on his seat, and he tried to move it, but he has teeth, so he shouldn't move things. He likes to pick things up and put them in places.
Did you achieve your polls then?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think I might have.
Someone
broken
tell
the
Sen
lobby.
if he made a poll or not.
I don't know anymore. Cool. Is there anything else about pandemic that we'd like to discuss?
I think last thing we were gonna say, and none offense to the game in any way, we just basically gushed about it for like an hour. We were gonna talk about whether or not, does it get away with certain things because it's the first of its kind, and would it still be able to do that now?
The first of his name.
Well, okay, the first recognizable of this hybrid co-op,
If it came out today,
Euro genre. If it came out today, what would happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think, Jamie?
I don't know, because it was did sort of lead the pack. It was, again, as you guys were talking about earlier, it wasn't the first co-op, but it was the first co-op that sort of made co-ops popular, I think, in a way, or showed that co-ops could be really fun. Would it hold up today? I don't know. I probably would, because I don't know a lot of other co-ops that are as good, that are as simple at the same time.
Right, and I think that's the thing. Like, so with the Forbidden series, they're definitely simpler, but I don't think they're as engaging to most people.
No.
You know what I'm going to say? I think the big difference, again, is as long as no one had taken it, theme. If there had been nothing between then and now, like let's say this came out now and nobody had really done this, you know, biohazard theme, you know, like the most things that go into that realm go into like scary apocalyptic craziness, right? So unless someone touched on that theme, I think it's still going to win out.
I agree, because like, actually, I have all the Pandemic stuff, but I find Pandemic Cthulhu to be my least favorite of the bunch, because it's just not a unique theme anymore.
That's interesting. Yeah. And obviously the Legacy series just adds to it and makes it more interesting in different ways, right? So, you know, I don't know. I think that Pandemic probably hit at the right time, and it was the right time, right place. And it is a good game. Definitely there's people who have their detractors when they talk about Pandemic. And, you know, is it my favorite game in the world? No. But the Legacy version has definitely created some of my most favorite moments in gaming. So I think it is a robust system that deserves all the accolades it's getting, and probably deserves all the criticism it's getting too, because and to be criticized is a good thing, I think, in this case, that people have played it enough to dissect it and realize that, you know, when you pull the curtains back, there's some things that, you know, don't make it as great if you are an alpha gamer, if you are somebody with, you know, photographic memory, if you're all those things, you go play Space Alert.
I mean, if you're all those things,
that's not going to help you there.
Don't play co-op games
because you're not fun to play co-op games with.
No, you don't want to play with others.
I think the one thing though that would be good for our audience, who are mostly game designers, to think about. This has been coming up a lot in various threads I've been talking on Facebook last few days about whether or not your game has to stand out in the marketplace. And it can be really hard to figure out whether or not your game will stand out in the marketplace and how to do it. But if you're making a co-op game, I think you've got it a little easier, because Pandemic is such a force. If you can answer the question, why would someone play your game instead of Pandemic or any of the Pandemics? If you can answer that question, you're on the road to finding out what makes your co-op game unique.
Good question. Good way to think about that. Okay, so let's see here. So for those of you who are looking for us, where do you find us?
Facebook, Twitter.
All the things.
All the things, yeah. If you look up Meeple Syrup on either.
You're probably already there because that's where this is showing. But if you want to follow us on Twitter, Jesse's at TTVoid, Erica's at Frenemy Games with an I. Jamie, are you on Twitter?
Nope, not at all.
No Twitters for Jamie?
No, you can only find me on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, you can follow me on Twitter at Senflunglim, where we talk about game stuff all the time, and at Meeple Syrup as well on Twitter. So definitely check us out. Follow us if you want more information.
Check out our group if you want to talk more about game design specifics.
Yes, Meeple Syrup
so we've got our shop talk.
Is a happening place. And we have 900.
Yes, we're now over 900 people on our Facebook group. So
which is great.
We're on our way, our goal for the 1,000.
And so if you can do anything to help us get that goal of 1,000, please do. That'd be wonderful.
If we hit 1,000, I'll do something cool.
There we go. Jesse, you can pick Jesse's hair color or something.
Move back to Ontario.
Only if you're going to pick pink.
Okay. You're limited to a shade of pink.
Travis is asking a question. 1 second. Who is going to Breakout Con? Erica, I'll be there. Jamie will be there.
Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, look who's not going to be there again, Jesse.
He's in California.
I know. It's okay.
Our next, we can talk about the next episodes coming up, and then we can sign off.
Yeah, Jim Baker will be there too. Good. Okay, so lots of people there. So next week's show is going to be super cool. So people have asked us, when I asked, who should we interview? a ton of people have mentioned KC. KC is a fellow from Nigeria who is making huge strides in not only game design, but popularizing game events in Nigeria. So much so that Matt actually, I think, went there, pandemic Matt, went there in the summer of last year to be part of the first game convention in Nigeria. So Casey will be coming on to the show next week. It'll be like 4 a.m. on the Thursday morning, his time. But he is definitely interested in coming on. The week after that, we'll have one of my co-designers, Jesse has to go. One of my co-designers, Jay Cormier, on the show to talk about his current Kickstarter, which is the Fail Faster book.
Playtest journal, which I think is a fascinating concept in itself. And I think
that's
a lot
a better
of
word than book. And it's really cool. He's gamified it. It's really kind of neat. And so if you're a game designer, check it out. You might want to use something like that. It's really cool. And then the week after that, we have Matt Holden coming on from the Indie Game Alliance. Matt's Indie Game Alliance offers a ton of really cool services for people who are just getting into game design and particularly self-publishing. And so if you're a self-publisher, if you want to self-publish and you don't have all the connections to like manufacturers and distribution and all that kind of stuff, check out the episode in 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks. And Matt Holden will be on about the Indie Game Alliance, or just go check them out right now. Go check out Indie Game Alliance right now. You'll find out just how much they can do for you. Brad Batchelor should be at BreakoutCon on Sunday. So this is awesome. Wicked. Good to see everybody coming to BreakoutCon. If you're there, look up myself, look up Erica, look up Jamie on Saturday, and we will play games with you. We would love to play games with you.
Oh, I'm running Bosk and Ghostbusters, I believe. So
very cool. What's a self-publisher? I'm gonna put that up there. So
someone who publishes for themselves.
Zach, it's a self-publisher. And I'll be running tournaments for Tic-Tac-Moo for the kids and for Gin for the adults. So a trick-taking game and a Bejeweled type of, match 3 type game. So come and play and have fun, and we'll see everybody there. Jamie, we'll see you there. I think that's awesome. I haven't seen you so long. That'll be great. So anyways, come back next week when Casey will be on the show. The week after that, Jay will be on the show. And the week after that, when we'll talk about the IGA, the Indie Game Alliance with Matt Holden. And on that note, good night.
Then we'll have a poll at some point, people, so we don't know what the game is, because Sen's figuring out polls.
I'll make a better poll than last time. Well, so you can only have 2 options, Erica.
That's it?
Yeah, if you're the group, in a group, you can only have 2 options.
Can somebody else post on our behalf and have more than 2 options?
So. I don't think on
if we approve it?
I don't think they can do that on a page. Maybe we could do it in Shop Talk. Maybe it's easier to do it in Shop Talk. I don't know. But whatever it is, it worked okay this time. We had like 30 people voting each time, which is good.
Okay.
So we'll pick a new game. So I hope you enjoyed the deep dive, the Dissecting the Game on Pandemic, and we'll see what we get to next time. It was super fun. Good to see you all. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you later.
Night, guys.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Meeple Syrup Show. If you'd like to support us on all of our projects, please check out our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Meeple Syrup. Hope to see you next week.